Welcome to the Causes or Cures podcast, your gateway to understanding health and groundbreaking medical research in a fun and easy to understand way. With Dr. Eeks as your host, join us as we sit down with the world's leading doctors and scientists to unravel the mysteries of health. From practical tips on well-being to the latest breakthroughs in medical research, we cover it all. Don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's ignite our curiosity and together dive into today's episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Causes or Cures. I'm Dr. Eeks, your host, and thanks so much for joining in 2025. I hope your 2025 is off to a stellar start, or at least an interesting one. Interesting can be better than stellar, keeps you engaged, curious for the long run. Not much can do that unless you're interesting. Good looks can't do it. You got to be interesting. Money can't even do it. Got to be interesting. All right. Going down a tangent. Anyhow, mine is off to a pretty good start, an interesting one, and maybe I'll sit down and write about it later. But for now, let's get on to today's topic. Did you ever wonder about those sit-stand desks? A lot of workplace wellness people went all in on the sit-stand desks, right? With the idea that getting people to stand more at work was better for their health, which sure, you could see how people would think that. And let's face it, we sit a lot today and work and don't work. We just sit a lot, especially since many people sit and, a lot of people today, they sit and they type on a laptop, which is great for your eyes too. And, they do this for the majority of their workday, 5 days a week. All that said, as it turns out, the relationship between standing at work and our health is nuanced and complicated. Today, my guest is Dr. Bethany Gibbs, who is a researcher and epidemiologist who has done a lot of research on sedentary behavior, or sitting, and our health. And today, she's going to talk about her recent work on standing more at work, more at work due to the sit-stand desk, and a person's blood pressure. She's going to tell us how the sit-stand desk impacted a person's blood pressure, which, as many of you know, is a key predictor in a person's health status and longevity, right? Blood pressure is, it tells you how a person's doing health-wise in a lot of cases. She's going to explain how she did her research, really interesting findings, and whether or not she thinks sitting is the new smoking. Right? You hear that all the time. Sitting is the new smoking. But is it? Is it, or is it not so simple? I think you guys will find this episode interesting, especially if you have a sit-stand desk or thought about getting one. I definitely thought about getting one. And Dr. Gibbs says a lot of good things here that you can apply to your everyday life and get a little healthier. So give me a few seconds here, guys, while we connect to Dr. Gibbs. All right, everyone, we are connecting with Dr. Bethany Gibbs, and we're going to talk about a study she did that I read, which I thought was cool because everyone kind of talks about sitting and how we sit too much. And this was an intervention type trial to see what would help lower blood pressure. But anyhow, Bethany, thanks for joining in. And I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I am an epidemiologist and not the, coronavirus finding type of epidemiologist. A lot of people think about infectious diseases and outbreaks, but we epidemiologists also study chronic diseases, things like obesity and physical activity and cardiovascular disease. And those are really my areas of specialty. We apply kind of the same types of methods but to these other conditions and health behaviors. So I've been studying physical activity for the past almost 20 years, and it's been a really fun time to be a physical activity epidemiologist because we have really changed the way we're thinking about physical activity. 20 years ago when I was in grad school, we were really thinking about exercise and going to the gym or running or, doing aerobics. And that is really good for you. And you really should do that, 30 minutes pretty much every day. But we have started thinking a lot that there's a lot of other time during the day. And so we have a new paradigm of physical activity that we call the 24-hour activity cycle. And so we're thinking, okay, you got to do that 30 minutes, but then there's 23 and a half more hours of other stuff. And that's usually some combination of sitting and standing and doing more lighter intensity activities, and sleeping. And it's probably true that there's an optimal balance of those things. And it might be different for different people or different for different outcomes, but we can certainly say something general about that. And, in the past 10 years, there's been this growing recognition that, people have coined the phrase sitting is the new smoking, which we'll talk about this today. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's certainly true that we are sitting more than ever. Technology and computers, and even, we have good data that even since COVID, people are working from home more and people are taking Zoom meetings in their office instead of walking down the hall. And so we are sitting more than ever. And so we're just as scientists right now, we're trying to understand, is that bad for us? And if it is, can we change it and get healthier? So that's sort of my area of research.
All right. Yeah. No. Okay. So we're going to come back to that, whether you agree with sitting as the new smoking, because I'm curious. I want to know your opinion on that. There was some other term I heard. It made me think of it when you were describing the change in physical activity, something marathon couch potato or.
Oh yeah. So I haven't heard that, but yeah, no, that's a huge, one of the things that we're trying to understand is that obviously some sitting has to be good for you. We can't be moving all the time. That wouldn't be good for us either if we never got to rest.
Yeah.
And, but, there were 50 years ago, nobody would ever sit at a desk and not get up for hours on end.
Right.
People would not sit on a couch and not get up for hours on end. But now that we don't have to watch commercials, or we have, we could just binge watch it, like the entire Penguin series. Like I may or may not have done that. If you don't have to get up, this kind of extreme sitting, we've measured this. I've done studies. A lot of my colleagues have done studies.
Yeah.
Bad stuff starts to happen to your physiology when you don't move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was people who like sit all day and then they go for like, half an hour at the gym and then they but that like might not be good for you or.
Yeah. I mean, the half hour at the gym is probably always going to be good for you, but it's not going. Yeah. If all you're doing other than that is sitting, then you probably have a problem.
These are all really important questions because, like you said, we are, sitting too much, and all our meetings are, Zoom and digital, and I'm also curious about like how we're always looked down at our phones, like our our necks are always.
Right. There's so many. There's so many things. There's musculoskeletal health, there's cardiovascular health, there's mental health, there's so many things. And I often go back to sort of, I like to think about like natural behavior. Like one thing is the way we evolved. And then another thing is if you look at like kids and what's natural for them before we like condition them to sit in a chair and like stare at, the front of the classroom or computers nowadays. So all that being said, yes, I think that, being in a very static position, unnatural position, for a long time in a prolonged way is, it makes sense that wouldn't be good for our bodies. Our bodies didn't evolve over century, whatever, however
long time.
I don't know. I guess it's more than centuries. Yeah, I think it's longer than that. But
I always get confused with it. I'm like, it's just a really long time.
Yeah, forever.
So tell me about this study that I recently read, and it got a lot of press. And you designed an intervention to replace 1 hour of sitting
a day? Well,
Well, yeah,
tell us about it.
yeah, I'll tell you about it. And this study was a labor. I call it a labor of love. It was so long that to do. It took so long to do it. We started before COVID. The study started. I think we got our initial funding in 2017, and I mean, I just feel like it was a different world. It was a totally different world. So we started in 2017, and sedentary behavior, studying sedentary behavior, the sitting behavior was really hot. And so we were trying to, there was a lot of observational studies, which is, I do a lot of those kind of research. We get a lot of data. You find people who sit a lot, you find people who don't sit as much, you compare their health. And so a lot of those studies and still continue to find that people who are sitting a lot, die more, have a lot, are more obese, have more cardiovascular disease, have more diabetes. So, all that observational data is strengthening and continues to strengthen. But there's probably something different about people who are sitting a lot versus people who don't sit a lot. And it's probably not just that they're sitting. And that's the issue we always run into with observational studies. So the best possible evidence we can have is a clinical trial where we recruit people that are sitting a lot, and then we try to change, we randomize them to either getting an intervention or not. The people who get the intervention, we're going to try to decrease their sitting and see if they get healthier. So that is the highest level of evidence. And at the time, again, we didn't know how to reduce sedentary behavior. It's really hard. It's not like exercise where you can say like, okay, come to this facility and we'll watch you exercise for 30 minutes. It's like people are doing this all day. It's their lifestyle. And if you just tell people to generally decrease their sitting, they actually have a really hard time doing it because, everyone's sitting is very much determined by what they have to do in a normal day. So if you have a desk job, you're probably sitting a lot unless you have some kind of, sit-stand desk or treadmill desk or whatever.
Right.
If you are, if your job is you're a medical tech, you're probably not sitting a lot.
Right.
And it's not, there's nothing we can really do to change that. That's kind of just what you have to do. And it's similar at home. I do a lot of research in during pregnancy and in women after pregnancy. And some of the two biggest predictors of sedentary behavior, high sedentary behavior are having a desk job and then not having any kids yet. Like if it's your first pregnancy, because you're not chasing your kids around at home. So
it's funny.
So all that being said, that we were, this was 2016, maybe when I was writing this grant, we were like, how are we going to reduce this sedentary behavior? Like, we don't even know how to do this.
Right.
And so what I and several other people kind of did at the time was we said, we know desk workers have a lot of sitting. And we know that we can give them a sit-stand desk and that can help them sit less. So that we can use wearables that like prompt them and they can move. So that was the thing to do because we're like, then we can get this big effect. And actually I was hoping to reduce the sitting by like 2 hours a day. That was my hope. And there were no guidelines. There's still no US guidelines about sitting. Canada has some guidelines, which I think they're a little too strict. But that's
like guidelines in terms of how much sitting
you're allowed to do. Mm-hmm.
What does Canada say?
Canada says less than 8 hours a day, which I think is like cuckoo bananas. I think almost nobody does that.
Yeah.
My number, if you had asked me, I would say 10 hours, less than 10 hours a day.
Okay.
But
that's doable.
They did not ask me. Yeah. So anyway, I was, and that's like based on, the data.
Yeah.
So anyway, we wanted to reduce it by 2 hours a day. And that was based on like, during the work day.
Okay.
And a spoiler is that we did get people to reduce their sitting by a little more than an hour a day during work. But, what that 2 hours was based on was that there were some ergonomic recommendations that people should be like using a sit-stand desk 15 to 30 minutes of each hour. And so times 8 hours, that is 2 to 4 hours a day. So that's where I got that like 2 hour change.
Right.
But when we actually looked at the data at the beginning, before we did any intervention, people almost had 2 hours of they had between like 1 and 2 hours of standing in a normal day before we did the intervention. So we got them to that like 2 to 4 hours of not sitting during the workday, but they didn't start from zero. So the change didn't look as big.
I got you.
That was sort of so anyway, that's how we decided we were going to be able to change sedentary behavior. And I used a little bit different strategy. A lot of other people, my colleagues were doing studies where they would go to a workplace and just recruit everyone there that wanted to do it. And so some people were, we know that 2/3 of the population have, are overweight or obese. So like that, they would typically have some people that had chronic health conditions, but they weren't specifically recruiting for any one chronic health condition.
Okay.
And I felt like the evidence was pretty equivocal for blood pressure, which is, the number one cause of, like upstream cause of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
And so that's why we decided to focus on blood pressure and like do a really good job, measure it as well as we could in multiple ways and sort of related factors to it. So rather than just going into a workplace, and this is what took so long, we recruited people who had high blood pressure, like medium high, like borderline.
Yeah.
It was pre-hypertension, then they changed the guidelines. That was called elevated.
Yeah.
But so these people that had like a touch of hypertension, but weren't on medicine yet, because medicine obviously like can blunt any kind of effects. So we had to find these people that like met all these criteria. Like
that's hard.
It was really hard. I mean, we screened thousands of people. My poor staff, they were amazing. But anyway, it was cool though, because we were recruiting people one at a time and then randomizing them. And so it would, we were moving through. But what I feel really lucky about is that when COVID happened, the people that were in the workplaces, their studies were just shut down because the workplaces were shut down and everything changed. And they had installed sit-stand desks in the workplaces and like that was just over.
Right.
But for us, we were already including people who worked from home. That was actually fine because we could do our intervention wherever.
Right.
And then afterwards, we got a lot more people who worked from home, as you would expect, because, a lot more people work from home now, or at least some of the time. And it was very cool because it has allowed us to do a lot of research looking at activity patterns for people who work from home and not as like a side project, because we just have this data.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what we're here to talk about today, but just as a side note, I find this fascinating. When we compare people who work from home to people who work in the office, as you might, well, first of all, what do you think would happen to a 24-hour behavior? A 24-hour behavior cycle for someone who's at home versus in the office.
So for me, I'm just thinking like maybe at home it would be more
of what?
Activity.
Yeah.
Am I right?
No,
I'm wrong.
I get that all the time. People are like, "Oh yeah, like you have all this free time and you can go for a run at lunch," and there's probably people who are doing that.
Yeah.
My guess is that the people who work from home and go for a run at lunch, they were going to find a way to go for that run, no matter what, even if they went into the office. So I feel like that is not, that is great. And if you're that person, that's awesome. And there's lots of benefits to working from home. But what we found was that a lot of those like incidental steps that people get, like the number of steps, like people got like 500 to 1,000 less steps per day, because you don't have to walk down the hall to go to the bathroom. You don't have to walk in from your car or do your commute or whatever that is. Like even if you're driving, you still have to park your car and walk in. So like
that makes sense. Yeah.
A lot of that incidental activity was gone. And people who worked from home did more prolonged sitting, more prolonged sitting, report more television watching. Maybe they get a little more discretionary time. So overall, like that, the waking behaviors, like people, you're basically losing your commute time, right?
Yeah.
So losing that commute time, it'd be great if that was just translated into physical activity, but it looks, at least in our data, it looked like it was mostly being replaced with like watching TV. But there is a silver lining. It was also replaced with sleep, more sleep. So, and that's actually a really good thing. So the people who worked from home got more sleep
Okay.
and were more likely to meet sleep guidelines. And that was 100% based on waking up later. So, and also had a more consistent, sleep health is having a moment and it should. And so they also had a more consistent sleep wake pattern, which makes sense. That regularity of sleep is another thing linked to kind of better health.
Yeah.
And so I think people who have to go into the office are waking up really early during the week and then they sleep in on the weekends. Whereas the people who work from home had a more stable wake up time in the morning. So that was a cool little side
Interesting.
fact from that.
Interesting. I guess you
So
can't ever just get it all in one place, right? Can't all just be perfect.
I know, I know. Well, I expected it to be like all bad. We actually sort of hypothesized going in that maybe people who worked from home would get worse sleep because like you could be working all the time and maybe like
Yeah.
you had a less structured schedule and maybe that
Yeah.
would mess things up. But our data did not suggest that at all. And we even did like some focus groups and I had a graduate student who this was like his dissertation project
Hmm.
and he did some interviews and focus groups and he talked to people and they said, yeah, I'm just like, the night before, you have to go to the office, like you're stressed, you don't sleep as well, you're waking up in the night to make sure you wake up on time. Whereas when you work from home, you're just more relaxed, you kind of get a better night's sleep. So I thought that was an interesting kind of report from folks and our data, kind of
Yeah.
bore it out. So very interesting.
It's so interesting.
So I got off track. Yes. So the
No, I think
study.
it's cool. I'm just like thinking about, uh, yeah, it all makes sense, but I guess it's like these little things with human behavior. It's hard to predict because like I'm thinking of
Yeah.
myself, like, oh, what would I do? But then it's, everybody's different.
I
So
know that's true. That's
yeah.
true. And you can't and probably yeah, and that's what's cool about thinking about this 24-hour activity paradigm is that,
Mhm.
if you're going to do more of something, you have to do less of something else. Like we have to understand that, right?
Yeah, it's very true.
And I think that theme will come back when I talk about the results of the study because so we recruited people and they had all
Yeah.
different work situations and we would work with them and try to figure out like what kind of sit stand desk option would work best for them. Some people we straight up bought them like a full sit stand desk, like a piece of furniture. Some people needed a little attachment. Some people that had a more we even had one person, I think she made jewelry, like that was her job, but she considered it a desk job. And so we had to get her this, we got her this kind of like roving like table. It was like almost like you would see in a hospital, like if you've ever seen them kind of like wheel something in, that's kind of like
Yeah.
some. So anyway, it was really fun. Like we were able to give people a really individualized thing. And
And the
then
sit stand desk, just so everybody's clear, this is just you're either sitting at it and working, or you can adjust it somehow, and then you're standing. It's
that's right.
okay. It's just simple as
That's
that.
right.
Okay.
That's right. But it's typically like you are where you are. And we, asked people to stand for 15 to 30 minutes of each hour, which is really the ergonomic recommendation. But we thought it made sense that would be good for, circulation.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a good time to mention kind of what we were thinking when we went into the study, which is that and we had shown this with data, and a lot of other people had shown this too. We used to do these studies. They were terrible, where we'd get people to come into the office for like a whole day, and we would do a simulated work day. We actually let people do their own work, but we would measure them every half hour, and we would just make them sit like without getting up. Like they could get up to go to
Oh
the bathroom, but
gosh.
that was it.
Yeah.
And they would just really have to sit. And then we'd measure a bunch of stuff all day. And so so people obviously on the days they're sitting more, like by the end of the day, like they have musculoskeletal discomfort, but also we saw that people's blood pressure would go up from sitting. And why would that happen? Well, what we found was that people, what happens is your blood, your circulation,
Mm-hmm.
really is quite dependent on moving a little bit. So obviously it's hard for your heart to pump blood down to your feet and back up. And so there's, speaking of evolution and all of our body's amazing things, one of the things that our body has is all the veins in our legs are one-way valves. So once the blood gets pushed up, it can't go back down. And that's great because that's easier on our heart. Our heart doesn't have to push as hard. And then in combination with that, all of our veins in our legs go through our muscles. And whenever the muscles contract or squeeze, it pushes that blood up. So that is work our heart does not have to do. But what happens when you sit is you never contract those muscles. And so you're not pushing your blood up with that mechanism that our bodies have, like that we evolved to have, where people used to not sit for hours on end. And so your heart and your blood pressure has to do the work. And so that's why it sort of goes up across the day, because you're really just not activating those muscles. We would explain this to our intervention. Part of our intervention was to really explain this to participants. So anyway, we have all this data that this is kind of like what used to happen on planes. I mean, it is what happens on planes when people used to say get up and just people never used to sit that long in other situations, and now we always sit that long.
Or they'd say wear compression socks.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right. Yeah. And people have actually done studies showing that if you wear compression socks, it reduces that effect, the prolonged sitting effect, even like at a desk or whatever, it can help.
I mean, I wear compression socks just because I like to, I don't know, I started wearing them when I run, and then I just kept wearing them. I don't know if it's
that might actually be quite good for you. Yeah, that might be
maybe.
So anyway, we would tell people this though during the intervention, and they would be like, "That is disgusting." And I'm like, I don't care what motivation you need. Just if you're sitting for too long, think about that blood pooling in your legs.
Yeah.
But we can measure it and see it. Like people actually, the width of your calf will increase over time the more you sit, and the blood is pooling in there. So that's super gross.
Right.
So anyway, so we asked people to stand for 15 to 30 minutes each hour.
Okay.
And then we gave them a Fitbit, and it, did that little thing that it does where if you haven't gotten 250 steps in an hour, it vibrates. And so we asked people to add in those 250 steps each hour, so that and we wanted them to do that every hour, but obviously they couldn't do it every hour. So
so they're standing, and then they're also taking steps.
Mm-hmm. That was our intervention. We wanted them to stand for 15 to 30 minutes each hour and we called it a movement break, because sometimes people couldn't take a walk. Ideally, you're taking like a 250 step walk, and this is really to get that muscle pump working. And kind of that was the idea. People couldn't always do that, so some people would say like, "Oh, I just dance at my desk or whatever." I mean, people would do all kinds of stuff, but that was what we asked people to do.
Okay.
So at the end of the study, comparing the people who were into the intervention to the control, we found that we did reduce sedentary behavior by over an hour a day. I think it was like an hour and some change, not an hour and a half, like less than that, but closer to 1 hour than 2, but still a sizable change, which over a week, it was over a whole week. So that's 7 hours a week. So that's a lot of time to not be sitting. But what we found, what people were doing, and this makes sense because this is what was very doable for the desk workers, they were just standing. They were just standing at their desks. Like that, they did it. They stood at their desks. They increased their standing. And this is on average in the whole, 270 people or whatever. But that was the behavior that they did, was just standing at their desks.
Just stand.
So we decreased sitting mostly by increasing standing. And then the increase in stepping was like 500 steps a day or something. It was not a lot. It was definitely not. And if you're brisk walking, it's about 100 steps a minute, maybe not even brisk. Like if you're walking around, maybe 75 steps per minute. So like that was not a sizable amount of time, maybe, less than 10 minutes a day of difference in that little piece. Even we would have liked more, but that we didn't get it.
Okay. So you wanted more, but the adherence to it just didn't.
I think people couldn't necessarily do it. I think people were trying to take movement breaks, but sometimes it was like just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Not the 2 or 3 minutes we were asking for. So I think that was a little harder for people to do. And I get it.
And the control group, they were just doing whatever normal.
They got it right. Normal. So what we just said, like, you're in the control group. We'll talk to you in 3 months. And the nice thing was we were able to give them the desk and the whole intervention after the study was, after they got measured the second time, we would do that with them if they were interested. And
Sure.
most people took us up on it. You know, some people just wanted money, and that was fine too.
Well, incentives are important. Like
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and everyone got to keep their desk, which was nice.
oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
So this 3 months, you did this for 3 months.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're measuring blood pressure.
Right. So we measured, our outcomes, our primary outcome was blood pressure, like really, really hardcore research grade measurement of blood pressure. So that's twice on 2 different days in the morning, fasting, no alcohol the day before, no vigorous exercise the day before, no caffeine, no smoking, like, super controlled in the morning 2 times, and the average of that, because we know blood pressure is really variable. It's quite hard to study. So,
For sure. Mine goes up.
Yeah, I mean, if you walk down the, or if you're nervous, or if you didn't have I mean, there's so many reasons it goes up. So we, and that was one of the reasons that it was really unclear how sedentary behavior is associated with blood pressure, because if it isn't measured really well, then you don't know if it's just noise.
Sure.
So we measured it really well. Then, our dear participants, we made them do an ambulatory 24-hour blood pressure measurement, which is really tough, but they did it. So we got like daytime blood pressure, nighttime blood pressure, like out in the world blood pressure. We also did a measurement of a subclinical measure that's really related to blood pressure called arterial stiffness. So this is a measurement, it's called pulse wave velocity, and it's a measurement of how stiff your artery is. We look at your aortic artery, and obviously if that's stiff, your heart has to work harder to push against it. So we want that number to be low. That's healthier. We don't want it to be high. So that, and it's a cool measure because it's something that it changes, and it's like adaptable. It's something that changes with your life. It's really related to age. It starts out low and increases over time, like blood pressure. But it is a continuous measure that's a little more stable than actual blood pressure. So that's why we wanted to include it, because it gives us, and it's a really good predictor of cardiovascular mortality and all that stuff long term. And our people were really pretty healthy. Like they had a little bit of high blood pressure, but not other conditions, and they weren't on medicine yet.
Okay. Now, what was your hypothesis?
Yeah, so we thought, the decreasing the sedentary behavior was going to lower the blood pressure. I mean, that was the idea. And so we thought that blood pressure would get lower. We thought that the arterial stiffness would get lower. We thought that the ambulatory blood pressure would get lower. We measured tons of other outcomes too, like mental health outcomes and blood. We did blood outcome, like lipids and all the glucose, insulin, all the things. So our hypothesis, based on the observational data, is that all of that stuff would improve.
All right. Okay.
Like it does with exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. No, of course, it makes sense. So 3 months happens, you analyze all the data.
3 months happens very slowly over 7 years. Yes, in 271 people over 7 years. The end of COVID pandemic.
Right.
Where we had to do crazy stuff like drop off blood pressure machines on people's front doors, and then like stand away from them while they took their own blood pressure and watched. Like it was crazy, but we did it.
Yeah. Good for you for sticking with it and getting it done, honestly.
And I just giving you the money and you just keep going.
Well, I mean, that's tough though. I mean,
it was tough. It was really tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. But I mean, it was important, and it was great that, like I said, we were lucky that we weren't set in an office building where it was total stop.
Oh, wow.
So at the end of the study, when we look at what happened to blood pressure in the intervention people versus the control people, which is really important because, we got to make sure that what happens to the two groups are going through time, COVID pandemic seasons, all the stuff at the same time. And so what we found was that there just really was no effect on blood pressure at all. Like I wish there had been, but there could not have been less of an effect on blood pressure. Like it was totally flat. So we, really concluded strongly. We had enough people. We measured in the best way. Our intervention worked. People reduced their sitting. And we just really saw no change in blood pressure compared to the control group. So we can kind of conclude quite soundly that if you have borderline blood pressure, there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of lifestyle changes you can make to reduce it. Getting a sit-stand desk and standing more at your sit-stand desk is not
It's not
something,
one of them.
is not what you should do. And like, just for the listener who cares about their health, like the things that have lots of evidence, things like obviously doing that more vigorous intensity physical activity, the 30 minutes a day, that is well known to reduce blood pressure. Changing your diet to a more Mediterranean style diet, a more DASH style diet, which has lower in sodium and greater in whole grains and all the stuff you're supposed to be doing. Reducing alcohol, like, alcohol is a weird thing, right? Like a little bit can be good, but too much is bad. So if you're having, more than 2 drinks a day, kind of reducing alcohol can help. And then stress reduction helps, getting better sleep helps. So there's a lot of lifestyle things you can do to improve your blood pressure, but sit-stand desk, standing more at your sit-stand desk does not appear to be one of them.
Now, did you see anything that got worse with the sit-stand desk?
Yes. So that was the unexpected finding as of when I had started the research. I did not expect this, but luckily, I feel like the universe usually takes care of me. And luckily, I had been looking at some things, so I had a good explanation for what we saw. But I'll tell you the sort of opposite of the hypothesis finding that we had. Now, certainly across the 2 groups, there was no difference. And I guess I should start by saying that this was in that arterial stiffness outcome that we were looking at. So again, if that arterial stiffness is higher, that's bad because that means your heart has to work harder. So we want our arteries to be flexible and compliant. And if they get stiff, that is like the beginning of things like heart failure and like your heart having to overwork. So what we found was that across groups, there was not a statistically significant difference, but the arterial stiffness went up a little bit in the intervention group, which is like the opposite. And it was not significant. So as far as like how to interpret it, I'd say there was no effect, but it was moving in the wrong direction. And so one of the things that we had planned to do, because, these are real people and people change their lifestyle in different ways. Some people were using their sit-stand desk a lot, like more like the 4 hours a day. Some people were not doing it at all. And so in the intervention, we really, in the primary analysis, we really just compare the 2 groups, because we know the intervention did something. But we can also look more specifically. We had really rigorous measures of activity. We would measure people for a week. So we know how much they're sitting, how much they're standing, how much they're stepping. We get really good measures of all these things. And so we knew who had changed their behavior a lot and who hadn't changed their behavior as much. So after the study was done, we looked at those changes in behavior over the 3 months, and we looked at the actual changes in behavior and how they related to the changes in blood pressure and the other outcomes. And so the really interesting outcome, another thing that was cool was we had people fill out time use diaries. So we knew about their working time and then about their not working time. So basically we knew that people who were doing a lot of standing during their work time were probably standing at their sit-stand desks, whereas the standing that happened outside of work was probably not at the sit-stand desk. So what we found was that standing during work time was more the people who stood the most, and this relationship or correlation was highly statistically significant. They actually had an increase in their arterial stiffness. So the people with the most standing, who increased their standing the most, actually got stiffer. Their arteries stiffened by the end of the study. And the size, the magnitude of this was not crazy. They didn't go into heart failure, but their arteries did get a little bit stiffer, which is the opposite of what we'd expect, because we thought that any kind of activity or activation is kind of a good thing. How we are explaining that, and actually between the time that we started the study and when we finally had the results, I had already written a couple of papers about standing, because all that stuff I talked to you about before, where if you're sitting for a long time, there's like blood pooling in your legs, and then your heart has to work harder.
Yeah.
When you are just standing still at your sit-stand desk, you are also not really activating your leg muscles very much. There's postural muscles that you need to engage to stay upright, but you're kind of balanced on your legs. And so your calf muscles and your thigh muscles that would normally be doing that muscle pump to pump the blood back up, they're not really engaged. And so there is like some evidence, and this is kind of our next step in the research, that maybe prolonged standing, static standing, it might be even worse than sitting.
Oh my, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so the monitors that we use something called an accelerometer that you tape to somebody's leg. And what that does for us is, because it's on the front of their thigh, based on the angle of it, we can tell if people are standing or sitting. So we know if they're standing or sitting, and of course we can tell if they're stepping or moving around.
Okay.
The way these like algorithms work is that the monitor, if you are stepping at less than a rate of about 20 steps per minute, which is pretty low, that's not like walking, that's just maybe like ambling around so if you're less than that, the monitor classifies the behavior as standing. And so from our thought, probably moving around like 20 steps per minute is enough to get this muscle pump going. And it's really like the 0 steps per minute that are probably the problem. But this monitor, the way we have it right now, we aren't able to tell those two things apart. So that's kind of something we're working on to try to get a better idea about, like, how often do you have to move to keep kind of bad thing from happening? So that's and the other piece to that is that when we looked at the standing, which could be a little bit of moving, the standing outside of work time, that was in the 100% opposite direction, beneficial. So standing outside of work time was related to a decrease in the arterial stiffness, and that is what we would expect.
Okay.
That moving, like a little bit of moving, would be good.
Right.
So I think it's really, so my new idea is that that probably all standing is not the same, and that like sort of stationary standing is possibly maybe even worse than sitting if you do it for a long time.
Yeah.
At least for blood pressure and kind of that kind of cardiovascular stuff, and that more active standing might be in that category of stepping and light activity that is actually beneficial. So that's kind of our next hypothesis. That we're writing grants right now to try to kind of interrogate that. And I'm actually hoping to go back to the data I already have and try to separate out that kind of standing and see if my hypothesis is right.
Not all standing is equal. I like that.
Maybe so. Yeah. Yes, maybe so. And just, the other thing to mention though is that we've looked at the epidemiologic literature. So I published a review on this a couple of years ago during the dark days of COVID, when we couldn't do very much, and we were all like, oh my God, we wrote so many papers because you couldn't leave the house. But I wrote a review paper with some colleagues about standing, like what's the evidence for standing.
Mm-hmm.
And from the epi literature, what we see is that if people report if you ask in a big population study, like, what proportion of your day do you spend standing? And people say like almost all the time, or half the time, or, almost never. But it's about all day. Then standing appears to be beneficial. So that more standing is related to less mortality and less kind of cardiovascular outcomes. Whereas, there's a whole other body of literature, occupational literature, that looks at people who have to do occupational standing, which is really this like static standing, standing at a cashier or standing like in a factory line. And all those studies show that standing is bad, related to more like subclinical kind of cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
So there is already this paradoxical like literature.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, our working hypothesis is that like there is that standing is multidimensional, and you have to know whether it's static standing or more active standing. And all those things have different cardiovascular effects.
Wow, that's really interesting. And and I'm thinking, because these standing desks were like such a huge hit, right? Like everyone in wellness, it was this
Oh my
workplace
gosh.
wellness initiative, get these
I
standing
know. I
desks.
know. And the ergonomists, standing desks have been around for a long time, like
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And the ergonomists have studied this forever. And I've had a lot of fun, like, just talking to so many different people because it does cross different fields. I'm always studying cardiovascular stuff or maybe obesity, energy expenditure. And but the ergonomists, they don't care about that at all. All they care about is like musculoskeletal health and so they were like, you would never stand for, more than an hour, like stand only 15 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe 50. Like they're thinking that like the kind of standing we're asking for is ridiculous. And then on top of that, that's sort of interesting is that this prolonged standing that I'm talking about, just because it maybe isn't great for cardiovascular stuff, it could have different effects on metabolic stuff, sort of musculoskeletal health. The very intervention that I told you about, where we want people to stand for 15 to 30 minutes and take a walking break, I did the same thing in a population of desk workers with chronic low back pain, and it was super effective at reducing chronic low back pain. We did like a cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of like pain management intervention with it, but it was like really effective. Like people who got our intervention reduced their low back pain disability score by 50% and sustained it at 6 months. So it's hard because you want a different intervention might have a different effect on a different health outcome.
Right. And you were looking at a specific outcome here, which was blood pressure, but maybe if we're looking at something else. So I guess, but I think people can process that, maybe it's not, you can't, it's too easy to say, it's too simplistic to say it's good or bad. It's kind of like maybe you got to, take your health issues and apply it accordingly.
100%. And I don't know if this is where you were going, but when I first got these results, my husband is not a scientist. He is like he works in valuation and he's like works from home and never, goes down to the basement and then emerges at 6 p.m. And sits is sitting down there the whole time, I'm sure. He does have a sit-stand desk, although I don't think he uses it very much. But when I showed him the result, I've been doing this study for so long. And when I got the results, I was like, oh my God, like it didn't work. And not only that, there's this like kind of bad finding with standing and the arterial stiffness.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, you're going to kill the sit-stand desk industry. Like they're going to hate you and no one's going to. And I was like, I really hope that's not true because I think that it's not that sit-stand desks are bad. I think it's that, we need to figure out like what's the right dose for the sit-stand desk and probably standing all the time is not good. I can probably say that pretty well. Like
conclusively. Yeah.
Don't stand all day, like in a static way. Like that is, it makes sense that wouldn't be good, but
yes.
But it's actually funny. I have a colleague, the OG sedentary behavior researchers were all in Australia. There was this like amazing group there that did all the initial studies that were super awesome and kind of brought this to light and all the conceptual stuff. I mean, it was awesome. And so I have a guy there, his name's David Dunstan, and I really look up to him. And I remember in the early days of the sedentary behavior stuff, I would see him at these like scientific meetings we'd go to, and we'd be doing this silly stuff like standing in the back of the room rather than sitting and watching the, all the people would, it was like a thing to do, like stand up and get in the back of the room so that you weren't getting your sedentary behavior. So I'm standing back there by him and I'm like, oh, and the two of us were talking, we were like, oh, we stand all day at our desks. Like we never sit down, we thought we were so cool. And so after this year, after I published this, or after the results of the study, it was like in process of being published. I like emailed him and I was like, I have to talk to you at this meeting. And I was like, I hope you're not still standing all day because this is not what we should be doing. Like I remembered we said that a long time ago and he laughed at me, but
that's so
I'm like,
fun.
okay, we don't need to be doing this anymore. And it all goes back to the idea, like everything in moderation, right?
Everything in moderation.
I don't think sit-stand desks are bad. I think that we shouldn't be standing all day.
Yeah.
And then I think that if you just think about it, like when you're at your sit-stand desk, changing posture frequently is probably good. And if you can, just try to, activate your leg muscles a little bit. And there's lots of ways to do that. Just, like even just some heel pumps, or if you can, take a little walk,
Yeah.
or just some like little, couple squats, just
Yeah.
anything to kind of help that circulation. But so that's part of the research we're hoping to do kind of next as part of, reprocess that all data, but also do some experiments to see, how much standing is bad, and are there things that we can do to kind of mitigate that standing? Because sit stand desks are great. Like you can choose if you want to use it or not, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But there's lots of people that have jobs where they have to stand all day, like retail and cashiers. And
You're
so
right.
for
Yeah.
those folks, we'd like to know, maybe if they just sit down a little bit, that could help, or maybe if they walk more, or like I said, just do some exercises. So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of my next like weird road that I'm trying to go down.
I think it's a really important road to try to figure out that dose. I mean, because so much of our life is working. I mean, for many people, right? So much
Right.
of it is working.
And like
So
I said, your activity pattern, I was talking about this
yeah,
at the beginning. I think people's activity patterns are really determined. Much of your day, you're not really choosing what your activity
right,
pattern is going to be. Like if you
right.
have that extra time, you do have that discretionary time, and you might choose to exercise or watch TV, but that's only a couple hours a day for most people,
Yeah,
if you're lucky. And
yeah,
so I mentioned that we do a lot of pregnancy research, and it's so interesting that like people's physical activity, like exercise, goes down across pregnancy. People exercise less later in pregnancy, obviously, like you're tired
yeah,
and, have a big stomach.
yeah.
But if we look at people's sedentary behavior and lighter activity and standing, that is actually quite stable across pregnancy. And I think that is just a testament to the fact that like we don't really pick that at just what we have to do in our lives. So it's good to, I think
Interesting.
we have to take it away from personal responsibility a little bit, and think about engineering our lives, or as a society, thinking about having a healthier movement pattern in our jobs, in our daily life, so that we can all be healthier.
I mean, and that's if you can figure that out, man,
Yeah, yeah,
you'll
just that, just that little thing.
yeah. I mean, it's no, it's really key, like just building more activity into your life. I try to do that with chores, by the way. I try to turn
Yeah,
chores into like workouts, and like whether I'm like squatting at the sink or like something, just like and it sounds crazy, but it's just like just little movements. And I'm like,
yeah,
these will
that's
add up,
right.
these will add up.
That's
Um,
right. I was just seeing Jim Gaffigan with my
oh, I love him.
15-year-old this weekend. It was really awesome. He was in Pittsburgh, and it's at the arena where the Pittsburgh Penguins play, which is like a newer arena. It's really nice. And we're ushering in, and there's this big escalator, and then there's this like big set of steps beside. And she's like, Mom, I know you're going to make me take these steps. And I'm like, we're going to take them. Like, this is our movement opportunity. We were the only people taking the steps.
That's hilarious.
She knows
Yeah,
me, but I think that's it. Like, we have to, we need to build, I think it's great. There is an option for steps there, right? Like,
yeah,
there's an
yeah.
option. Nobody was doing it, but there is an option. And I also think like having a culture where, we just have more opportunities to move, like, and we have to value that.
Yeah,
It's like those studies they do where they try to put fruits and vegetables in bodegas and nobody buys them.
right,
People have to want them. Like the
right,
store's not going to have them if nobody wants to buy them.
right.
So, it has
I
to
had like
be,
a scary experience in my elevator where like it's like an armpit. It's like one of these small,
yeah.
and it's like always breaks down. So
Oh,
now I'm like, and like I got like trapped in there the one night, and I'm like, you know what? This is like a public health initiative because I am taking the
yeah.
stairs from here on
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. No,
So,
that's great. Yeah. So taking the scare, or
yeah,
like, and this is another problem. Like I live in a suburb, and we were
yeah,
talking before the show started about how I changed institutions, and now my commute's a little bit longer, which I hate. Like I would love it, and
yeah.
being in New York is great
If
because
you walk all the
you can
time,
walk all the time. I
all the
mean,
time. Yeah,
it's well established that people
yeah,
who live in like New York are much more active than people who live like in suburbs or rural
yeah.
areas, because we just have to get in our car. Like we
It's
can't
true.
get anywhere other ways. But just finding it is even funny. I live in a neighborhood that maybe has like 300 houses, and I walk almost every day, but I just get such a kick out of people who drive to other people's houses in the neighborhood. I'm like, there's beautiful sidewalks. It's super safe.
Yeah.
And I see people driving like 10 houses down, and I'm like, really? You're doing that? Like, so I think that, yeah, just developing.
What is that? Like, because I mean, obviously I could tell you're like motivated and you're like, I'm doing this. I'm walking, like we're taking the steps. But then like some people, it's like the awareness isn't even there. Like
that's what yeah. The awareness isn't there. And I think it's, there's, just like in the intervention I did, that people could use the sit stand desk because it was a thing they could do that didn't interrupt their lifestyle. And then it's also funny. I remember when I first started getting the sit stand desks, I have a really awesome colleague friend. She's super cute, super fit, super eats healthy. And she was like, well, I can't have that sit stand desk because of my shoes. I have to wear my heels and I can stand and it's just like funny the barriers people have to like, and probably like some people were at Jim Gaffigan in their heels and they were like, I'm not walking up those steps, or they're wearing something,
Right.
And so luckily I'm like old lady, I'm like in my flats. I'm like,
I never wear heels. I don't do it. I couldn't function in the city. Like I can't walk in them for long.
Right.
Like
that's right.
So,
that's right.
Or like you bring out your pair of backup shoes and your purse and I'm like, I'm just done with this. I'm just wearing my flats.
I know, forget it. Right. I luckily I think it's more acceptable now, right? To just have
I think so.
Bigger ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like tennis shoes, right? You can wear with anything now.
With anything.
Big white tennis shoes just with a dress. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I have friends who always wear heels and they actually can walk in heels very well. And they're like, well, our legs look better in heels. I'm like, okay, well, I can't do it. I'm just gonna
No, but there's a lot of research about the built environment that shows that like on a population level, and of course that's what we're thinking about, right? Like as a population, if we want more people to move, that the most effective thing is to design communities and environments that are more movement permissive. And so I think that if we just had a little, when we build plans and buildings and even like you're saying, finding the stairs, like I always try to find the stairs. I cannot find the stairs very often, right? Like if I'm at a hotel, I'm like, where are the stairs? Like I'm up 2 floors. I would like to take the stairs, or the stairs are scary, or, there's all kinds of, things where like, it's not the default. It's like something you have to search out, and which makes it that much harder. So if we could just as a society have a default where like movement and more active lifestyle is the default, that would be pretty impactful.
That's amazing. I mean, that's great advice. And it kind of makes you think too about all the people that should be involved in health. It's not just like researchers, epidemiologists, public health professionals. It's the builders, it's the city planners. It's everybody should play a role. So
and they have other fish to fry too, right? Like they're not building something that's like, okay, my main objective is to make sure people are getting their steps. Like they have a lot of other things to worry about.
They have the climate stuff is funny in New York City because we're grappling with that, and it's going to cost to kind of make buildings more efficient, and everyone's like, well, we can't afford it, and so it's perfect is the enemy of good, I guess, but it's just where we're trending. So I don't want to take up too. This was really super interesting. So I guess to end on the note, to get back to sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like you're completely on board with that.
Well, so I think, what I wish my study had definitively said was like, reducing sitting doesn't reduce blood pressure. And I, unfortunately, going back to that idea that like, if you're reducing sitting, you're doing something, and probably what you're doing. So I think if people had reduced their sitting and had been moving, they would have reduced their blood pressure. But because they were really just standing in a static way, they didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think I can say that particular behavioral exchange was not effective for reducing blood pressure, but we still need to, and that's important. But I think I still believe that we need to sit less, we need to move more. But I like this. This isn't mine. I can't even, I don't even know who said it, but the opposite of sitting is not standing. The opposite of sitting is moving. So I think that's
I like that.
that's probably what
Yeah.
we need to be doing.
Yeah. Well, this is cool. This is really interesting, Bethany. Thank you so much. I learned a lot too. So yeah, yeah. So move more. I guess that's a good take home point for everyone. All right. And stay in touch when you get some of these other results. I'm always
Yeah, sure.
curious. And there's this huge push now, to kind of get everyone healthier. I'm kind of like, well, if we can do it, let's,
I know.
figure out
Well,
ways.
and I love that about getting active because I feel
Yeah.
like, diet is hard and we should all eat
Oh,
healthier, but
yeah.
the focus on like losing weight, like I just
Yeah.
hate that so much. That's what I was studying early in my career, and it was so discouraging because there'd be these weight loss studies and then people would gain the weight back. And
Yeah.
we have appetite suppressants now, which I think are going to be a great help.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's why I love physical activity because like it feels good to do it if you
Yeah.
just do it. Like if you get in the habit of it, the more you do it, it feels
Yeah.
good. It's something you're doing. You can make it fun. Like
Yeah.
it's not like don't eat and only eat 1,000 calories a day. Like that to me is just totally unsustainable. But like adding more activity in your life,
Yeah.
that is something that I think people can really enjoy and can be a
I
good
think
thing.
that's the key, the word enjoyment,
Mhm.
and not, sometimes when we present physical activity, it's like people get this image of like, a treadmill or
Oh
something
yeah,
like,
here's your medicine. That's some
yes,
wexternization. Yeah, here's your prescription. Get on the
yeah,
treadmill for 30
yeah.
minutes a day, which I would hate.
I would hate
Yeah.
it too. So
Yeah.
I mean, I like to work outside, but work out outside. And I think if you can combine like joy, like the joy of movement, and
Yes.
like we might be able to
Find
get
something.
somewhere.
That's what we tell people. Find something you like doing.
Yeah,
Do you like talking with your friends? Go walk with your friends. Do
yeah,
you like dancing?
dancing, yeah, something
Class.
like
Like
that.
do something you like that
Yeah,
you can keep doing.
yeah,
And it doesn't have to be painful to be effective. That's what's so
exactly,
great. And just walking
exactly.
is great.
Yeah,
And it's and another thing we really help people do is key into that. I think people often, again, they're just trying to like check the box and they're not really recognizing how much better they feel. Physical activity
yeah,
has so many benefits, sleep, mental health,
yeah.
physical health, like there's so many good things that come from it. And so we just try to get people to really connect with their how they feel. And that really helps people keep going because
Yeah.
if you're doing something
Awareness.
you hate, like getting on a treadmill and then your knee hurts, like nobody's gonna
I
do that.
hate the treadmill.
I do
I
too.
can't do, I mean, I will do it like if there's no, but I'm like, oh, this is awful.
I would always find another option. Yeah,
Alternative. Yeah. I'm
absolutely. But some people love it, and that's great. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, I know, well, he was like training for like but he was able to run on this treadmill for hours. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that. Cannot. I'm like bored out of my mind. It's like it doesn't help
I
me.
always
Yeah.
hurt myself because I think I run funny
Yeah,
on
if you
there.
distract yourself even slightly, you could like
Yeah.
fall off it. Yeah. So anyways, Betty, thank you so much for your time. This
My
was
pleasure.
great.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed
Yeah,
talking to you. It was great to be here.
absolutely. You too. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in for today's episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links. There's my social media links and a link to Dr. Gibbs' research paper in case you want to nerd out. I know some of you do. Some of you want to read and nerd out. If if you want to participate in the nightly health question routine, and these get really fun and creative and bizarre. Hit a follow on my Facebook page. And this is a tradition that I started, unless I pass out for some reason early and forget to type. But I ask my audience a health related question, and everyone jumps in and contributes. And it's really fun. We just did one about the craziest home remedy you've ever tried or heard of. And the answers had me rolling, literally rolling. So definitely check it out. And all right. And now it's time for today's closing quote. This quote is from Moshe Feldenkrais. I probably massacred that person's name. Moshe Feldenkrais. Yeah. Oh, well, forget that. But he was a physicist and emphasized the importance of movement for health. I would probably just call him Mo in real life to make things simple because I'm really bad with names. So anyhow, here's his quote. Movement is life. Without movement, life is unthinkable. True in the physical sense and also in the metaphorical sense. All right, everyone. I hope you tune in next time. Do check out some of the older episodes that are posted. Check out the bonus episodes as they get posted. I just have to sit down and record them and put them up. That's on me. And have a great night or day wherever you are on planet Earth. And goodbye for now.